Hello, welcome back to my channel, Thrifty Day. My name is Leah. I'm the creator behind Thrifty Day. Today's episode is part 2 of our large scrapbooks that we are making. This summer, I decided I wanted to organize all of my pictures from the 70s and 80s and 90s, and I just have tons of photos and boxes. So what I am doing is I am making these large scrapbook style journals, I guess, or they're just large scrapbooks. Really what I'm doing is putting photos in them. If you want to know exactly what I'm talking about, head back to part 1. I will link it down below. You can see one of the large children's book scrapbooks that I've already made. It's actually just a large photo album. And so in that first part, we put together a very large scrapbook. And in this particular episode, we are going to be sewing in our signatures, and we are also going to be gluing in the inside covers just to make it look a little bit more decorative. And so I did a detailed list in part 1, but for part 2, what you are going to need are 2 pieces of cardstock. You are going to need an awl. This is just a template I use to punch holes. You're going to need fabric tack. You're going to need clips of some kind. I got mine at the Dollar Tree. I like these because they have rubber grips and they don't make dents in my paper. You will also need an embroidery thread and embroidery needle. The color doesn't really matter because we're actually going to do a patchwork style quilt spine. So there's not going to be any sewing of fabric, so don't panic. I'm not sewing anything, but by the time we're done, it will look like a patchwork spine. And we're not going to do that step until part 3 though, because it's a whole kind of tutorial moment all to itself. So today what we're going to do is put in the inside covers and sew in our signatures. So you will also need your signatures. Let me show you mine. So these are my signatures. I'm going to do 5 signatures. They are all going to be of heavy duty cardstock. I mentioned in the previous video that I got mine at Michael's. So if you wanted more information on that, please check out part 1. And I only have 3 or 4 pages each per signature because I'm going to have the photo holders and photos in here. So this is going to get very heavy and very bulky quickly. So I already have these ones cut down. You're going to want to cut them down to the correct size. Let me see if you could see. Let me move this stuff out of the way. I have just a tiny bit on the top and the bottom, but I have them cut down to the right size and the correct measurements for when I sew them in. I will do one signature with you so you can see, but I didn't really want to bore you and show you me cutting every single signature down because I have lots of videos here on YouTube where you can actually see me doing that slowly and in detail. You can check them out in my How to Make a Journal playlist here on YouTube. If you want an even slower, longer version, you can follow me for exclusive content over on Patreon because I have lots of journal tutorials, hidden binding, painted journals. I have all of those tutorials over on Patreon. So you can find lots of journal ones here too. So just check out my channel, see what you like. You can tap on the link and look at Patreon too. And but let's get started. I'm going to put my pages aside for now because the first thing that we're going to do is glue in the inside covers. So this first step is a really easy process. This is just cardstock from a paper pad that I got at Joann's, and I just cut it down to size. So I'm hoping that you can see in most children's books, since that's what we're using for this tutorial, you can actually see that they're doing the same sort of thing. There is a paper just glued right into the book to make it look nicer, cleaner, decorative. So we're just sort of putting an overlay over that so that our inside covers look a little bit more decorative and match the sort of theme and aesthetic that we're going for this scrapbook or photo album. So I usually just sort of eyeball it. Mine's about 11.5 by 8.5. And if that's a little bit too long, I'll just kind of trim it down. And so that's why I am already ready to go. I did 2 of them. And so we are going to use fabric tack. You can use PVA glue for this step. I usually use PVA glue for everything, but because it is going to be going over this fabric a little bit, I do find fabric tack works just a little bit better for this step. But if PVA is all you have, then go for it. Go ahead and use PVA glue. I do recommend, even though this glue dries really quickly, after you apply this glue and we apply these inside covers. I do recommend laying it flat and perhaps putting like large books over it, just so the inside covers dry nice and flat. That's something I usually do. I don't leave it there for a really long time. Gosh, 10, 15, 20 minutes is even fine. The longer you can leave it, the better, because truly it will just dry nice and flat. And as you can see, I am very generous with my glue. This is not a time to skimp. We don't want these lifting at any point. We want them to dry. I mean, we want them to be adhered really well, and we want them to dry nice and clean. So there you go. It's that simple. We're just going to do it with both of our pieces of cardstock. I love this cardstock. At the moment, I can't remember what paper pack it's from, but I did show it in part 1. So again, if you were interested in knowing where I got this paper, check out part 1, because I'm pretty sure I showed the whole paper pad in that episode. And like I said in the beginning of this video, the last part, the final part, part 3, will be where we make the patchwork quilt. I keep calling it patchwork quilt, the patchwork spine. If you don't know what I mean by that, again, check out part 1, because I show you what a patchwork spine looks like. And so in part 3, I will show you how to make it. You don't have to do a patchwork spine if you don't want to. Truly, if you want to be done after this part, you can. You'll just be able to see your sewing, which is fine. That's how I've made journals for years. I've just recently started doing these sort of patchwork spines, and I love them, so I'm kind of doing them on all of my most recent journals. And since I haven't done a tutorial on the patchwork spine, since I just started making them, this was a nice opportunity for me to be able to do a tutorial. So that will be in part 3 though, which will be live in just a few days. So let's put this part down. And we are in business. We're almost done here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sit mine off to the side with some heavy books on it, just for a little bit. And while we are putting this under some heavy books, we will work on our signatures. And then once we're done with that, we will sew them in. So I'm just going to go do that, and I will be right back. All right, so these are our signatures. I did tell you I was going to do 5. I already have 4 completely trimmed and ready to go. And as you can see, I have these clips in them. I'm going to actually transfer these clips over to the outside, because we are going to need these to open, obviously, to sew them into our photo album. So you can use whatever paper you like. I mentioned before that I got mine at Michael's, and it was a little bit pricey, but I'm really happy that I invested in good paper, because as I made my other scrapbook photo album, it's really heavy, because there are so many pictures and so many photo holders that I appreciated having the more heavy-duty paper. But if you are not, if you don't have access to a Michael's, or if you don't want to spend that money, I think another really good, more affordable option would be to use the mailing craft rolls that you can get at Target or Office Depot or Office Max, and you can cut it off into strips, and you do need to iron it so it's not like rolled up. So it takes a little bit longer, but that's a good alternative if you wanted to save a little bit of money and do it that way. So I'm just going to show you what we need to do. This is how long mine were. Obviously, I need to trim them because I need them to fit into my photo album. So I went ahead and kept this one long. I have the clips on the end that does not open, just so I can trim them down. And like I said, I need mine to be, oh gosh, I don't even remember now, 8.5, a little less than 8.5. And I went ahead and marked it too, just so I could show you. And I do use this little paper cutter. I told you all that in the past. This is what I use literally for everything. And I'm just gonna kind of move them aside. It's a little bit thick, so I do need to lift a few up. And again, if you want a more detailed, longer version of how I put signatures together, please check out my How to Make a Journal playlist here on YouTube, because I go into detail and I walk you through it a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and move these clips because now all of my signatures are ready to be sewn into my scrapbook. And we are ready to go. I'm so excited. We're getting there. This scrapbook is coming together. All right, so let's punch some holes into our photo album or scrapbook, whatever you want to call it. It looks so nice now that it has a really pretty inside cover. So now we just need to get our pages in. And the way that I do that is I just make a template. I made a new template for this particular scrapbook because it's bigger than any scrapbook I've ever made. So how I do that is I cut a piece of paper that is generally the same size as the spine that I use. This one is a little bit bigger because my last scrapbook that I made was a little bit bigger and I'm just using the same one. So the most important thing to remember with signatures is you just want to make sure that they are evenly spaced. And that is so that your pages are evenly spaced, therefore your content that you're putting inside of your pages can be, you know, just layered nicely. So it's not a huge deal. It doesn't need to be exactly perfectly pinstripe straight, just a general good sort of spacing. I just fold it and then I drew those lines to know where I had folded. That way I know they're all spaced just about right. Like I said, 5 signatures. The more important part to me is to make sure that you have your holes that you're punching wide enough across the spine because you want to have a really firm foundation. In part one, we talked about how our spine is the foundation for what will be a very heavy photo album or scrapbook. And so it's important that these holes are evenly distributed also up and down or, you know, vertical. So the way that I do that to make sure that those holes go across perfectly is I fold it in half. So I know that they'll be right in the middle. And then from the bottom, I just find the halfway point and I put the bottom portion right up to the middle. And then I do the same on the top. Therefore, I have holes going perfectly straight across in exactly the positions I want them in. So like I said, this one's a little bit wider, so I'm going to try to make sure that it's all evenly distributed. I think it is. It's good enough. I told you guys, I eyeball everything. This is where you get your awl. Please be very careful. If you do not have a steady hand, make sure you have somebody helping you. These are very sharp. I've been poked many times and it's really not fun. So I urge you to be careful. And then you just follow where those holes are that you have already marked or used your pen to dot, and you just go right through. You want to make sure you go through pretty well. This isn't going to go all the way through if you were using the really thick chipboard like I am currently using. So really what I'm looking to do right now is just mark where these holes are so that I can go through again, make sure that those holes go all the way through. So you'll see what I mean in a second. I'm putting a lot of pressure on here and I'm trying to be as careful as possible because like I said, this is a very pointy, heavy duty tool. And we just want to be very careful. And I'm getting close, so that's the good thing. And then once you're done using this particular template, don't get rid of it, save it, because you may make another journal or scrapbook this size, and then you don't have to make another template. I usually cover them, because I save all my templates that I make, I usually cover them in packing tape, and I don't know why I didn't cover this one yet. But that way I can continue to use it and it doesn't, you know, get ripped or anything. So I have a whole drawer full of these templates and I just pull them out and see which one fits best. And yeah, so I'll save them. So I'll definitely put tape over that so I can continue to use it. So I don't know if you can tell, it's probably hard to see, but pretty much what I went through and did was mark where all those holes are. So now I'm actually going to go through the front and I'm going to punch them through even better. I'll probably stand it up, which is going to be hard for you to see, but I'm going to stand it up and then I'm going to very carefully just go through and make sure that those holes go all the way through. Let me see if I can show you. So see, I don't know if you can tell. It's hard to actually tell, but as you can see, that's what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through and make sure that they're all a little bit bigger. So I'm actually going to turn the camera off and do that so I can do it safely and then come back and show you what it looks like. All right, so I'm not sure if you can see, but all of my holes have been punched into the spine. I did do it off camera because this chipboard is extremely thick and I did want to make sure that I did it safely, and I didn't want to have to talk. I wanted to focus. And I think I've mentioned before in YouTubes that I don't have the best vision. I really struggle with my vision. And so I didn't want to hurt myself. So I just transferred everything that was on my template onto the spine, and I did that as carefully as possible. So now what we need to do though is we need to make our signatures. We need to put we need to put holes into our signatures so that we can begin to sew in the signatures into the spine. Now, I do this a little bit different, I think, than many other journal creators. I have found this way works best for me. It may not work best for you, but I'm going to show you my process just so you can see, and you can let me know what you think, or maybe tell me your process and let me know, because I'm always open to learning a new way, and if it's easier, that's great. So what I do is I actually line up my pages directly onto the holes that I just punched, and I mark the holes, and then I punch them after with my awl. You can't see the tiny pen dots we put because once you punch the holes, it kind of camouflages it, so you don't need to worry about that. So I'm just going to make sure these are lined up nice, and I'm going to make one dot, the bottom, the middle, and the top, and then I'm going to get my next signature, and I'm going to do the same thing, being careful to lay them right on top of each other. The way I want them to look when they are sewn in is the way I am laying them on top of each other now. And I always start with the back. So that's what I'm doing there. And I have just found that this is the best way for me because, you know, we're human. When we punch in these holes, they may not always be perfect. And so I know a lot of people will use the template and then match up the holes and put them on the inside, and that totally makes sense in my head. But when I do it, sometimes the holes don't end up lining up correctly once I sew them in. And so I kind of stopped doing it that way. I started doing it this way, and I've never had a problem. My pages always line up. My signatures are always nice and perfect, and this is just a process that really works for me. So I hope it is something that will work for you too. So that's all I do. See, this is exactly the way I want my scrapbook to look when it's done, when they're sewed in. So I see that it looks great and we're ready to go. So what I am going to do now is flip over these four. I'm just going to be careful to keep them in order, put them to the side, and then I'm going to start making the holes in these. So let me start by showing you one. See, the little dot is right there. I kind of put my finger on it just so I know. And then I move my finger when I'm going to put that all through. And that's it. You just go right through. And I'm going to do that for every single one. Right into the dot. And right into, that one's a little high, so I just got to go lower. So now we have holes. And this is our bottom signature. So I'm going to put it right here on the side, being careful to keep them in order. And I'm going to do it with the next one now. Once they're all done, I'll come back and we will start sewing. All right, so all my holes are punched into the signature pages. I'm going to take the first four signatures, careful to keep them in order. I'm going to flip them over and store them over here because I always start with the last signature. I start by sewing in the last signature and then I work my way up to the front. I don't know why, it's just the way I do it. So now you're going to be using your embroidery needle and some embroidery thread. You can pick a decorative color if you would like. You don't have to, because if you want to do the patchwork spine, you won't actually even see the embroidery thread. But that's entirely up to you. That's a preference of yours. So I measure it 3 times the width of the spine. And then I cut it. If I could find my scissors, hold on. Cut it. and then I lace it right through the needle. If I can do that. I told you that I struggle with my vision, so putting a thread through a needle eye isn't always the easiest. I'm going to set the rest of my embroidery thread aside, and I'm going to go ahead and sew in one of these signatures with you just so you can see. I will do the other 4 signatures off camera, just so I don't bore you to pieces. If you were looking to want to see a more detailed account of doing this, and I do all 4 or 5 or however many signatures, you can check out my How to Make a Journal playlist, because I've done that a few different times here. So you start in the middle, and again, I'm going to let you know that because these are large scrapbooks, they're a little bit harder to sew in, and I can already tell you it's going to be a little bit harder for me to show you how to sew them in. So we start at the middle. I put a little bit of washi tape just so when I pull right now, it'll stay put. So we start in the middle, and then I'm going to flip the book over, and then we're going to go to that top hole. Like I said, it's probably going to be difficult for you to see right now because it's difficult even for me to sew. And we're going to go all the way through the signature, and we're going to end up back inside. Now we're going to go back into the middle, and we're going to go through, careful not to go through the embroidery thread, and go back through. Can you see that middle hole? I'm going to flip the book around again. Like I said, this isn't easy when you're doing it on a very large scrapbook. Let me see if this is better. Now we're going to go to that bottom hole, and we're going to go through the signatures again. And now we are right back into the middle of the book. We're going to go into this middle hole again. Careful to try to not go through any of that embroidery thread. Go into the hole of the spine and work our way right back out. And now we're going to go to the top hole again. Every time being careful not to go through the embroidery thread, because otherwise it's going to make pulling it a little bit tight in the end. It's going to make that a little bit harder. So now that we're at the top, we're going to skip the middle hole this time, and we're going to go directly to the bottom. Go through the signatures, go through the spine, and now we are right back out on the outside of the spine. This is the last time we're going to go through. We're going to go through that middle hole one more time, go through the signature, and we are finally done. Let's pull it all the way through. You don't need your needle anymore. Go ahead and put that away. You don't really need your clips either. Put those away. I'm going to remove that little bit of washi tape now. And this is where we're just going to kind of gently start tugging to make sure that these are nice and tight. Let's look on the outside. This looks nice and taut. That's what you want. You want to make sure, if you can hear that, that they are nice and flush against the spine. Once you have that, you know you're about done. So I just give it one more little tug, and then I'm going to tie it in a few knots. I think I probably cut too much thread there. That was a little bit unnecessary, but I have a few knots I just tied there, and then I'm going to trim off these tails, and I'm going to show you how that looks. So you have your back signature sewed in. This is what it looks like on the top. As you can tell, it's perfect right there on the inside. And now all I need to do is sew in the other 4 signatures, and we'll be ready to go. So let me do that off camera, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's complete. All right, I sewed in all of the signatures. I hope you can see them there. I will open it up so you can see. I'm really happy with how nice and clean it looks, how they turned out. This is what they look like from the bottom. So we have a lot of nice signatures, and we have a beautiful scrapbook. Now, truthfully, if you wanted to end here and just add your photo holders and all of your photos, that would be totally fine. You can totally be done now. This is a nice complete scrapbook. The thing we are going to do in part 3, the tutorial for part 3, is going to be adding a patchwork spine, and it's strictly decorative. It isn't anything that you have to do for like the stability of the scrapbook. It really is just to kind of be pretty and add a nice little touch. I will tell you, these scrapbooks, once they are finished, are heavy. So heavy. I'll have to weigh one, and I will weigh one, and then I will let you know what it weighs in part 3. But they're very heavy once you fill them with all of your memories. And so this is what the patchwork spine looks like. You then don't really see the sewing. I will be doing that in part 3, and I'll also be showing you just how easy it is to add all of the photos and whatnot. So that is it for this video. I hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. As you can see, it closes really nicely because we're going to be adding all those photos and photo holders, so it will look just really nice. It sits really pretty on a shelf. And but leave any questions below. Please hit that like button. That would mean so much to me. If you are new, welcome, and please subscribe to my channel. I'm super excited to continue this tutorial. It will be finished in part 3, and that will be posted in just a few days. So I hope you all have a really good one. If you are looking for exclusive content, please subscribe to my Patreon. All of that is linked below. I hope you all have a really great day, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.